All right, so we're recording now, so just get started whenever you want.
Tak?
Okay.
All right. Bueno. All right.
Bueno.
Wait. Yeah, I gotta get you.
Український.
Добре.
Український. Добре. Добре. Добре.
Так. Привіт! Ласкаво просимо епізод 8 Lingoholicals podcast. Мене звати Ian. My name is Ian, and we are here for episode 8. We're zooming you here. So today we got a special guest. It's a dear friend of mine, a guy that I've known for 10 years here almost, since the University of Saskatchewan, when me and him were international studies seminar students. So today's guest, we got Lee Reaney. Lee, are you there?
How's it going, Ian? It's nice to chat with you again.
Як справи, Lee?
Все буде добре тут. Все добре.
Дуже добре? Так. Okay. І зараз,
Дуже добре.
let's go around. Дуже добре.
100%.
Що? Okay,
Я не
I'm
чую.
gonna go around the horn. I'm gonna go around the horn in English here. Англійською. Будь ласка.
Добре.
All right, we're going around the Zoom horn to Kodo. Litkovi. Pan Litkovi. Як справи? How are you, dude?
Привет!
Привет. Как дела?
Yeah, I don't know that I only know like
Хорошо, you say
three
хорошо.
phrases.
Хорошо.
Yeah, so for about like half an hour before we met up just now, I was so Ian requested Marcus and I to look up a bit of Russian.
Yeah.
And not Ukrainian. And I want to ask why, Ian?
Okay. Well, I'm going to throw the Y to Lee because in Ukraine,
Sure.
You can't really talk about Ukrainian and Russian without.
Yeah,
But,
you can't speak about the Ukrainian language without speaking about the Russian language.
Yeah. It's intertwined, right? Like
You can't live in Ukraine without Russian language.
Right.
Not that you need to speak Russian language, but the music you listen to will be in Ukrainian and in Russian. The movies you watch will be in Ukrainian and in Russian and in English and other languages. But everybody in this country is fluently bilingual, and you will find throughout this entire podcast that we specifically relate Ukrainian language to Russian language because you really don't have Ukrainian without Russian. They're not the same thing. But they coexist and they kind of need each other.
Yeah.
But they're very similar, though.
Yeah, but Ukrainian is also it's actually been closer to Belarusian, and it's also very close to Polish. So it's kind of in between Polish and Russian, which, if you look at a map, makes some sense.
Mhm.
But so no, it's not just close to Russian; it's also close to Polish. It's just the language that's in this part of the region.
Yeah, the Eastern
That is
Slavic.
sort of a mix, or in between. Yeah, it's an Eastern Slavic language for sure. I can understand, based on what I speak in Ukrainian, which would be, I don't know, 75%, somewhere in that area. I understand about 20% of Russian, just without even learning Russian. So I get the basics, but I also understand a lot of Czech, a lot of Polish, a lot of Serbian. So once you speak the Slavic language, once you read the Slavic, the Cyrillic alphabet, you can get through the basics like numbers and foods at a restaurant. They're more or less moloko, mleko, like, which is milk. They're very similar words. Odin, like they're. So you don't need to have the accent to understand what's being said in other Slavic countries,
Right.
Slavic language countries.
So it's a little bit like Romance languages, then.
I was just going to
Italian
say
and
that.
Spanish,
Absolutely.
Portuguese.
So, all right. So, okay. Well, a couple reasons.
Same language family. Yeah.
Same language family. So, big reason I wanted to have Lee on for the show today. So for me, Ukrainian was a big deal. Arguably, I'd say like our last guest, Azrin. Remember when we asked him, "What's your favorite language?" in the show? And
What did he
said
say?
He said
French?
the one. No. He said the one I'm working on currently was his favorite language, which like that made more sense to me after I thought about it, because from like when I was like late 2013 to 2017, when I was going full bore with Ukrainian, and it was like my main focus for languages, it was definitely my favorite language because it was something I was striving for all the time. And for me, like I did Spanish and then French, and then Ukrainian was the next like logical language to take on for me because part of my heritage, I am half Ukrainian, like all on my mom's side's Ukrainian, and also Ukrainian just being Slavic and kind of a different, like I'd say more out there of a challenge for a language speaker than the Romance languages. So it was like, okay, like I did Spanish, I did French, let's take on Ukrainian. And then not only that, so like kind of my side of it, but then Lee. So Lee, if you just talk a little bit about your life in Ukraine, you've been there. Well, when did you first go to Ukraine? Like talk about a little bit your history, your relationship with the country, and you've been living there full time since 2012, correct?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah,
Since 2012. I've been traveling to the region since 2001, so about 19 years, which this country is 27, so
right, since independence.
So for much of its modern history, I've been traveling in and out of Ukraine, and I have a pretty good understanding of the country. I came out here on an exchange program first, Canada World Youth, which is a very big program in Canada, fantastic, wonderful program. And most people end up moving to Canada, but some of us do end up moving to the countries that we were based in, and that's happened with me. And yeah, I was based in Western Ukraine, which is a very Ukrainian language area. And when I was out there, I had the decision to make, like every foreigner that comes to Ukraine. And even today on expat groups on Facebook, when somebody's moving to Ukraine, they ask the question to expats out here, well, what language should I learn? Like, do I need to learn Ukrainian or can I learn Russian? Because people still think that Russian will be could use it in another country, which they'll never travel to, but they still think that's the mentality. That's what they think, because, I might travel to Russia or, Kazakhstan or Belarus, the other countries that speak Russian, right? And of course they never do. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But I was based in Western Ukraine, and I was young and idealistic, and so I felt that I should learn the language of the country that I was in. So I made the effort to learn Ukrainian, and that's turned out to be the right decision in so many different aspects. First of all, coming from Saskatchewan with a large Ukrainian diaspora community, learning Ukrainian language developed ties with the diaspora community that I didn't have before. I ended up working for the Ukrainian Canadian Congress there. I ended up doing some Ukrainian dancing in Saskatoon, a number of other connections out there. But, I think we'll talk about it a little bit later as well. But after the Euromaidan in Ukraine, the language norms in Ukraine changed fundamentally. And being a Ukrainian speaker out here right now, a Ukrainian speaker that does not speak Russian, makes me very popular among the Ukrainian community, and again provides me far more opportunities than I would have if I did not speak Ukrainian.
So Lee, I have a question. Where exactly are you right now?
So right now I'm in Kyiv. I am a student at the Taras Shevchenko National University in the Department of the Institute of International Relations, where I'm finishing my master's degree in international relations.
Who's Taras Shevchenko? Who's Taras Shevchenko?
Taras Shevchenko is like the Wayne Gretzky of Ukraine. He's the single most famous person. He's a poet from the 19th century. And his poems were in Ukrainian language, and he's a hero. He's on the money out here. He's on T-shirts. There's actually a film coming out later this year called Taras Shevchenko, The Last Samurai, or something like that. And like it looks really, really cool. It looks like Kung Fu Hustle, if you know that movie, something along those lines. But Taras Shevchenko, everybody knows. In Canada, there's a Taras Shevchenko picture in every Ukrainian school. In fact, at the Taras Shevchenko Monument in Lviv, which is where I'm normally based, that was paid for by the Canadian diaspora. And so just to finish answering your question, I am based in Kyiv right now. I'm living in Kyiv. I'm from Western Ukraine. I was born, I say, that's in quotation marks, in a small city called Ostrog. That's where I spent my first 4 years or so in Ukraine. It's a town that's about 9,000 people when the university's not in, and about 13,000 people when the university is in. And then I've been editor of Lviv Today, which Lviv is the Western Ukrainian city, be like Vancouver in Canada. It is the super pro-Ukrainian part of the country. It was part of Europe. It was part of Poland until 1939. It was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire until the late 19th century. It's been under 5 empires in the last century. So it's a very different city in than most other places in Ukraine, and that's my home. That's where I'm from. But I am living in Kyiv, and I am chatting with you right now from Kyiv, Ukraine.
So speaking of famous people named Shevchenko, you obviously know Andrei Shevchenko.
I do, actually. I am known for my sports journalism out here, and Shevchenko right now is the manager of the national football team. And so I actually would have been interviewing him last month had quarantine not hit. There was the Euro Championships.
No way.
And I would have been down in Bucharest in Romania covering the Ukrainian games there. And so, yes, I do know. I've met him. We don't go for beers, right? but yeah. Shevchenko is the modern Shevchenko, the most famous Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Well, almost. There's the Klitschko brothers that are probably still more famous than Andrei Shevchenko. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool, so you used to live in Lviv then?
That's still my home. I'm just in Kyiv right now because I'm doing my university out here. So, yeah.
So Lviv, that's where. Okay, so when I went to Ukraine, so that was 2017. So that was part of episode 3. We talked about the Polyglot Gathering. We did the whole episode about it. So the second part of that trip for me was going to meet my Ukrainian family. So learning Ukrainian was like purely for like heritage reasons for me, and also like an interest with the country. So going there, so I went across Bratislava, Krakow, and then to Lviv. So it was pretty awesome because I was spending 4 days, like a Thursday to the Sunday, with my Ukrainian family there. And the guy who accompanied me during this entire journey was one of my best friends, the expat Lee, who was kind of like my translator, photographer, companion the whole trip. So
cultural
I just want to talk a little bit about, because with language learning, we talk about the different levels that we have, the different things we can reach, but really I think it's some of the experiences and the adventures that we can have. So these 4 days in Lviv, so this western city in Ukraine that I had with Lee, turned out to be like probably 4 of the craziest days of my life. So Lee was there with me. So Lee, do you just want to talk about, so we'll go through.
Let's hear some stories, boys. Let's hear some stories.
Sure. So I took the bus from Krakow, like late Wednesday night or whatever. So it was like, I think it was like a 9-hour bus ride to get.
That's because you spent 3 or 4 hours at the border. It's actually like 200 kilometers between this. It's not that far, but there's a really long wait at the border.
Okay, yeah, but the border wasn't too bad because you've probably been across that border way more than me.
The border is much better coming from Poland into Ukraine than going from Ukraine into Poland.
Because you're entering the EU.
No, it's because there's so much smuggling that goes on in Ukraine. So when you get on a bus, they always tear it apart and they find a whole bunch of cigarettes and other sort of contraband.
you said going into the EU is
Yeah,
more
yeah. So when you go from
cumbersome.
Ukraine into Poland, they bring in all kinds of contraband, primarily cigarettes, but other alcohol, other sorts of stuff. And I remember I was on the bus once, and I asked the bus driver because they find all the stuff, right? I'm like, why do you do it? They always find it. They're like, oh, they only get about half.
Lose half the contraband.
Yeah, they only get half. Yeah, so they do it because the Poles get half, and I'm sure the Poles probably allow half of it to happen. Poland is rather reliant on Ukrainian labor right now. I will let you know that Poland is the biggest supporter of Ukraine in the world, more than Canada, more than any other country in the world. Poland is a massive supporter of modern Ukraine. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, go Poland.
So what happens when you get to the border? What do you have to go out and they just check everything, or?
So from Ukraine to Poland, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go by bus, I mean, there's different ways to get across, but if you go by bus, you get to the border, you wait in line. There's usually with a bus, you don't have to wait in the 150 car lineup. You go into the bus lineup. There's usually 4 or 5 buses in front of you. Sometimes it can take hours. I mean, I spent 8 or 9 hours at the border there one time, but sometimes it takes 2 or 3 hours, so it's not so bad. But everybody gets pulled off the bus. Well, you go through the Ukrainian customs first, which essentially they make sure that, like for me, they make sure that I'm still legal in Ukraine, that I didn't overstay my time, I don't have to pay any fines, that sort of thing. So they just make sure everybody's legal to get into Poland, they're legal to exit Ukraine, and then you go through. The Ukrainian border guards don't look at the bus at all. Then you move up to the Polish border guards, everybody gets off the bus, you hand in your passports. They go through the passports, and then they check your bags. Sometimes more thoroughly than others. It really depends, as I think every border crossing is like anywhere. And then they go through the bus. There's a hole underneath, and so they look under the bus. They tear things out. They have dogs around. Ukrainians stick stuff up under the ceiling, right, or the panels. That's where they put in. The Poles know where all the stuff is. And like I said, I think that the Polish guards allow some of the stuff to go through. Like they could probably find 100% of it if they want, but I think they allow part of it to go through. They catch half of it, and everybody kind of goes on. The Poles look like they're doing their job. The Ukrainians still to make a living. Poles still get the cheap cigarettes. So that's sort of the experience. Is that sort of answer your question?
Yeah. So what about if you were to travel to Ukraine? Is the visa process as cumbersome as going to Russia, or because
no visa? There's no visa.
No visa for Westerners.
Yeah, it's very easy.
That's nice. So you just go there.
That happened in 2006. It was like the one thing that the Yushchenko government did after the Orange Revolution that sort of moved Ukraine. It was the one thing in 5 years that he was able to accomplish, was abolishing the visa regimen. Now, if you want to stay out here like me, you need to get a visa. But like you can travel out here visa free for 3 months, and then you can come back again 3 months. It's like Europe. Right, you can go to Europe for 3 months.
Right,
you have to be outside for 3 months, and you can go back. So it's the same.
So Lee, do you have a type of permanent residency there, or how does that work?
Right now I'm under a student, not permanent residency. I'm a temporary resident. Permanent residency tends to be for either investors or people that are getting married. I work out here, so I get a temporary permit every year. Right now I'm on a student permit. Normally I'm on a foreign journalist permit.
So would it be really hard to obtain that permanent residency then? Or
no?
You just have to find some nice Ukrainsky lady.
Yep, which is
Zhinka Ukrainska.
Not particularly difficult. There's a lot of Ukrainian women that are specifically looking for that. Not all of them. I don't want to give that sort of
right.
But there are there are women in this country that do look for that sort of thing. But it's also not hard to start a company out here, and a lot of foreigners do that as well. So yeah, if you want permanent residency, it's easier than lots of other places in the world.
Nice.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's a really easy border to cross, though. Like they took the passport a couple times, like going into Ukraine, just as a one-time experience.
Even going into Russia is not all that difficult. I'll be perfectly, as long as you have your visa before you go.
Yeah, but
No,
isn't it really complicated to get the visa? You need like an invite from someone and yada, yada, yada.
Not really. So I've been to Russia twice, both times before, Russia invaded Ukraine. Um, and I had I don't want to say a buddy, but a guy that I knew at the embassy through my first application. He was very helpful. And essentially what you do is you pay a company in Russia to give you the invite letter, and they tell you you don't have to stay at the hotels, but they write what hotels you'll stay at. This is a process. The people at the Russian consulate understand it. It's just a whole thing to get through the visa process. But you pay, I think I paid something like $125 for this letter. And it's like a tourism company. So you just pay for the letter, you get the letter, and that's your invite letter. And so the invite letter, what the Russian government cares about is where you're going to stay. They need to know where you're going to stay the entire time you're there. And it's usually hotels. So if you book a hotel, then your hotel can give you that letter, right? But if you're staying with friends, for example, like I was doing, then I had to get the friends could do it, but it's really onerous on your friends. And your friends in this part of the world, you don't want to have to do anything. You don't want to have to deal with anything official. You don't want to have to deal with any government body. It's just it's a real hassle. And so I would never dream of asking my friends in Russia or Ukraine to write that sort of letter for me, because then they have to go and deal with the government, right? So you just pay, like I said, I think I paid $100, $125. This was about 7 years ago. And you just get the letter, and then you bring in the letter to the consulate, and it says, so essentially this company pays the hotels to say that this person is staying at that hotel for the government. That's how it works. So
but you don't have to stay there.
You do not have to stay at the hotel, but your letter will say that you're staying at this hotel because you're in this city. So they have partner hotels in each of the cities. And so whatever city you go to, and if they don't have one, then if you're going to Sochi, which I went to, then they would find a hotel in Sochi and say, this is what we do. They'd probably pass some money off to the hotel. And then if for some chance the Russian government calls the hotel, they're like, yeah, he's registered here.
Oh, okay.
That's how the process
It's complicated.
works.
Yeah.
Look, most people, no, it's not sketchy because everybody knows how it works, right?
Okay, right.
The whole idea is that the Russian government needs to know where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
but they don't really.
There's no border between Russia and Belarus. So you could actually get into Russia from Belarus without going through a border.
There's no border crossing there?
No.
Oh, wow.
But getting into Belarus is equally onerous.
Belarus is a little bit different. We're getting a little bit from Ukrainian language here, but Belarus is hit or miss. Right now, you can fly into Belarus. I think you get a 5-day visa-free if you fly in, but you can't take the bus across. You can't drive across. You can't take the train across. So you have to fly in. You get 5 days free. Belarus will be hosting the World Hockey Championships next year. If you have one ticket, and last time I went to the World Hockey Championships in Belarus, I paid $2 American for my hockey ticket, and that was my visa. And it's good for the whole tournament, so it's like a month visa. And you could go by train or car or bus. So there's ways to get around the Belarus thing. But generally speaking, if you want to see Belarus, you get 5 days for free. The other way to do it, I had a buddy who came out here to Ukraine, and he wanted to go to Belarus to visit friends from the time we were there for the hockey tournament. And and there's a bunch of things that you have to do. You have to have the health insurance, right? So we spent $200 on health insurance in Canada. And then we went to the Belarusian consulate embassy here in Kyiv, and we gave them the insurance. And they're like, oh, it's not valid for Belarus. He's like, no, it's valid for everywhere. And so they're like, well, point it out. Where does it say it's valid for Belarus? And it's like a 20-page booklet, and it never literally said that it's valid for Belarus. So they made him buy insurance, which was a bit of a joke. So we went across the street to buy the insurance from the company, and it cost him, I think it was $3 American for the insurance. So he spent like $250 in Canada, and he got the insurance for $3 here. So if you want to go to Belarus, just come over to Ukraine, apply for it here. It's far simpler. So, and that's for a visa. That's not your 5-day visa. That's going across by train or bus. That's good for like a month or a couple months. So that's your proper visa to Belarus. That's not the visa free if you fly in.
And yeah, it's quite the region that way. I don't know. I guess Belarus and Russia, though, like that's the government they have there, right? That makes
the leader of Belarus, he's been there for like 40 years, right?
Lukashenko, they call him Batska, like Daddy, Papa, Batska.
Baska?
How long has he been in power for, Lee?
Boy, all but the first term, so all but 4 years. So it would be 23 years.
Okay, like so yeah.
And he just actually last week he just banned the two primary opposition candidates from running. Well, he didn't. It was the Central Election Commission, but obviously there's likely some play from the government there. But yeah, his two primary opposition figures have been banned from running for president against him this year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of turmoil, right, in Belarus recently. That's what I heard.
What type of turmoil?
I don't know. My friend who's from Russia, he's been saying that there's a lot of young people are not too happy about what's going on.
Yeah, well, the young people in Belarus see what's happening in Ukraine. They see what's going on in Russia, and they know where they want to go. The problem is that Lukashenko, there's just no political dissent in. He cracks down very quickly and very hard on political dissent. Outside of political dissent in Belarus, there's, it's a fascinating country that I highly recommend taking the chance to go out and visit and try to meet some Belarusian people. It's we're going to talk about Ukrainian language today, but Belarusian language is a show that I highly recommend you do. I can recommend some people to chat with about that one. But we'll bring up a couple of the points about Belarus today, but people forget about Belarus. It's a very interesting country. Politics are a little bit tricky there right now, but I mean, they understand what's going on. They know what happened in Ukraine. They see what's going on in Russia. They know what they want. So yeah. Anyway, I loved Belarus when I was there, and I highly recommend taking the opportunity to go out and visit if you have the chance. And next year during the World Hockey Championships, one hockey ticket.
We'll be there.
Visa free.
All right, let's bring it back to that Ukrainian language.
Yeah.
All right, Lee, how did I do?
I'll introduce it, and then I'm gonna let Ian tell a couple stories, and I'll
it was like it turned in when you spend 4 years prepping for a language, kind of like I did, and it was like all packed into like 4 days. It's kind of surreal, but okay, Lee, you take it away. Because I showed up in Lviv, you were there to meet me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I met Ian in university, he was a Spanish guy. He spoke Spanish. He had spent time in.
Does he speak Spanish?
But that's what he studied. That's what he focused on in our program. That's what his passion was. And I was Eastern Europe, Poland, Ukraine in particular. And I was studying Ukrainian language at the time. And so I didn't even know when we were in university together that he was Ukrainian. I didn't know that he was diaspora. I found that out after we were in the program. And we, he was really excited that I was living out here, and he was planning to come out, and he was waiting, and he planned this whole diaspora trip. And so I'm going to just give you the diaspora trip is something that happens here in Ukraine.
What is diaspora? Just so everyone knows our listeners know what that is.
Diaspora are Ukrainians that do not live in Ukraine, but they can be like the great-great-great-grandchildren of the first Ukrainians moved.
Third generation.
But they can also be like people that moved 5 years ago, right? So it's really any Ukrainian that doesn't live in Ukraine is diaspora. Mm-hmm. And in Canada, the Ukrainian diaspora tends to be very like fifth generation Ukrainian in Canada. So they're Canadians with great grandparents that actually lived in Ukraine, but they have we'll talk about diaspora a little bit later.
Especially Western Canada, like Alberta, Saskatchewan.
No, Ontario too. No,
okay.
don't.
Right,
okay. No. Ontario probably has the biggest and most influential part of the Ukrainian diaspora community in Canada. So, but obviously Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, but Ontario, I would say, probably has the biggest diaspora community.
Oh, okay.
They have the most people. So,
so
the diaspora community is very fascinating. It's unlike any other ethnocultural group in Canada, the Ukrainian diaspora group. They have such an affinity for the country. It's visceral. It is, they get tattoos. We're talking about great-grandchildren of people, who've never been to Ukraine, who don't speak the language, who eat maybe less Ukrainian food than I did before I came to Ukraine, but they still, like I said, they get the trizub, like I have on my hockey jersey I'm wearing right now. They get the trizub tattooed on their arms or their backs or their legs, and they really care about anything that goes on in Ukraine. And one unique aspect of the Ukrainian diaspora community is that they have this need to go back and meet their ancestors. And I've never seen this. I'm sure it must exist in some other community, but with the Ukrainian diaspora community, they have to come back and they have to meet and we're talking about like great grandchildren of people. So like some of the people in the family, I'm talking about grandparents had never been to Ukraine, right? And yet great grandchildren want to come out here and they have to go to the villages and they have to meet the families. And so I had already done this when Ian came out. And so I already had some experience facilitating a diaspora trip. And so I gave Ian some recommendations, bring photos, get as much history as you can, know what questions you can, try to have names, and Ian's a lingoholic. He likes to learn languages. So
shout out to that show.
So he made a serious effort at learning Ukrainian, and he got out here, and we met the family. And Ian, I'm going to give my take a little bit, but I want you to give a little bit of your impression of getting out here and meeting your family and that.
Yeah. Like for me, it was a matter of, I'm lucky my uncle here in Alberta still Skypes regularly with one of the main relatives, Stephen, out there. So that was kind of my in through my family. And
so we met. He met us in Lviv as soon as Ian arrived.
So he's the Stephen, and his sons.
In fact, I think I had met Stephen before you arrived. We were both waiting for you when you got off the bus.
Oh right, yeah. And then I was kind of blurry because I just on that 9-hour bus ride. It's hot out. I'm kind of dazed, and like my Ukrainian's like, all right, let's get it going. And then Lee's there, my family's there, and you're like, holy snap, I'm in Ukraine now. Like this is what I dreamed of. Because you're right. Yeah, it was totally that. I want to go back, meet my family in Ukraine proper. It's just like Lee talked about that diaspora wish. Like I was definitely one of those people that wanted to do that.
And I just want to throw out that Ian is not like a super diaspora, meaning he wasn't raised in a home that spoke Ukrainian at home. He didn't go to a Ukrainian language school.
Around me, but not
didn't do Ukrainian dance. There are very Ukrainian diaspora people in Canada. Ian is diaspora because of his heritage, but I don't think you were raised overly Ukrainian.
No. It was just like an interest, right?
Ian, I have a question for you. When did you start learning or studying Ukrainian?
2013. So
and when was this trip?
2017. So June 2017.
And we were in university together in 2011. So it was 2 years after we were in school. Right.
So this Stephen I actually met, he came to Canada to one of my cousin's wedding, and he was like speaking a little Ukrainian with me. But I spoke nothing like at my cousin's wedding, and that was just like, okay, like I want to go speak Ukrainian in his country one day, like in Ukraine. So that's what got the ball rolling, and then it was like a.
And then I was pressing Ian to come out here every year to go to a hockey tournament.
Lee's always like, come out here. On top of it.
So it worked out this year. So Ian, we meet your family. We get in the car. Yeah. You, me, and your uncle, and what do you remember from? Because like I remember, but I want your recollections of the first part. So the first leg and our first stop. What do you remember from that?
Okay, so the first day, remember we stayed at your journalism buddy's place, and then the next day we made arrangements. We're going west of Lviv. So imagine like basically going from Calgary to Strathmore, big city, small town. because that's where
That's east though, but never mind.
whatever.
We were about
The
30
ratio.
kilometers from the Polish border.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to a small town. I was like, this is the first relatives. You're gonna meet.
Villages. They weren't even small towns. They were
Sorry,
villages.
villages. Yeah, the villages.
Yeah.
So show up. This is the first house of, I'm going to say 5 or 6.
The first day we hit at least 4 or 5. Yeah. The first day.
Yeah, so everyone's super welcoming. Like, it's all in Ukrainian, so I'm like pumped. Like, okay, everything that I've learned, practiced for, this is all happening right now this weekend. The first place I just thought was unique, like had a big spread of food for us. Lee, do you want to talk about the 3 shots that you always have to do upon arrival in a Ukrainian household?
Sure. So I'll give you a little bit of drinking etiquette when you're in Ukraine.
Sure, because it's definitely applied.
Well, it's very important. And honestly, I mean, one of the primary reasons why I learned this language is because I was out drinking with people. And, you know, that was how I met Ukrainians. I wasn't hanging around with foreigners when I was out here. I was in a small town and hanging around with locals who didn't speak English. So I had one, obviously a girl I was dating, which sort of happens when you move to a different country, and she spoke English, but she refused to translate for me unless I really didn't get what was going on. And so you know, drinking is one of the best ways to, especially like basic language, to just pick up the things, to the greetings, a couple funny phrases, you know, things to get people to laugh, whatever it is. And so anyway, there's a massive drinking culture in this part of the world, as I'm pretty sure you're all aware of. I've written I'm a journalist out here, and I've written several articles on, I wrote an article on how to pour vodka, which was so popular, I actually had to rewrite it and double the amount of rules that I included in the first article. Because I had people who was like, oh, that's great, but like you forgot about this rule. But drinking is another thing. So toasting out here, I wrote another article.
Toasting, yeah.
This is an article I wrote 2 years ago. It's still trending on the website. Like, that's how popular it is. And there's a couple key rules. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. If you're interested, you can contact me. I'll get you the link. So, but the key things, I'll just give you like 3 key rules for toasting in Ukraine. First of all, you have to do at least 3 shots. So 2 shots is only for a funeral, or 4 shots is only for a funeral. So you have to do an even amount for a funeral. Other than that, you have to do at minimum 3. You can't just have 1. You can't have 2 unless it's a funeral. You have to have 3 or more. Each shot is for something different. The 3rd shot is always for love. Has to be. Zalubov. Yeah, and it could be like, you know, if you don't want to talk about love between a man and a woman or whatever, it could be like, I love this city, I love this culture, I love the Maple Leafs, whatever it is, right? But it has to be love is the 3rd shot. There's one other time that you can do 4 shots outside of a funeral, and that's if you're fighting the war in eastern Ukraine. They do 4 shots. The 3rd shot, instead of for love, it's the only time that you can not make a shot for love. They toast. This is for the comrades we've lost. So this is for the people that we've lost. And then the 4th shot is so that you don't drink the 3rd shot to us.
Okay.
That's hardcore.
So that last one's only been like the last 5 years then, right?
6 years, yeah.
6 years. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Lee, where does one find these articles? And second of all, are they in Ukrainian or English?
No, I write in English. So I'm an English language journalist out here. I'm editor of Lviv Today, so you can find that at lvivtoday.com.ua.
We'll put some links in the show notes.
And I'm also a journalist over at What's on Kyiv. And so you can find that at what'sonkyiv.com, and we'll put the links up. But yeah, you can find all these articles. You can find out if you're interested in any Ukrainian holiday, if you're interested in different cultural norms out here. If you're interested in learning about how to live in Ukraine or why Ukrainians do certain things, I've likely already written about it, and I have a great article I could send you.
Cool.
Yeah. So these 3 shots, that's like per household that you go to. So That was the first
but
house.
we weren't just doing 3 per house, Ian. We were
I
doing
know,
3
that's
at
why I
some of
said
them.
that's why I said minimum.
Oh my
So wait,
Um,
another question. Is this when you enter the house, like when you first meet the people?
you sit down, you have the
And then you
meal,
take the shots.
present
Oh, it's
yourselves,
okay. So it's with the
talking.
meal. It's not like, okay, you have to
Yeah,
take
it's
these
with the
shots
meal.
before you enter the
And
house.
it's gradual. It's not like bang, bang, bang.
Wait.
Oh.
You cannot drink shots of vodka in this part of the world without eating. So even when I was working at the university, I was hanging around with a bunch of 17-year-olds. I was 24. They were just about to enter university. So you enter university, you finish high school at 17 here. And so they were the only kids in town at the time. And so they didn't have a lot of money. And so we would go out and buy the cheapest vodka that you could buy, but you could not pull enough money just to get the bottle of vodka. You had to buy the cheapest, grossest bread you could find too, because you had to have something to eat. So even like 16, 17-year-old guys that go out and buy vodka out here, they still will buy bread with it. You cannot drink vodka out here without, and it's actually called horilka in Ukrainian, not vodka. Horilka. You cannot buy horilka out here without having something to eat. Period.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
That's
rule.
so interesting.
Absolute rule.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was amazing because you're like, okay, you're meeting the family, you're trying to speak as best Ukrainian, but at the same time, they're like, all right, here's the food, here's the drink. Like, that was almost like just as important to make sure you were doing that.
And just to clarify, this is real food. It's not potato chips.
Yeah. No.
It's like kovbasa, which is like sausage and mashed potatoes and cabbage rolls and
like the whole Ukrainian.
10 o'clock in the morning was the first one that we got, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The first day I think we had 4 or 5 different places, and they each had a spread, as you do, because anytime in Ukraine that like a visitor comes, so a foreigner comes, especially when you're outside of the city, when you go to a village, it's a big thing, you know. Like, it's not every day somebody from Canada goes to, you know, a village of 800 people in, you know, anywhere in Ukraine. And so they bring out the good vodka, right? Or their special samahonka, which is homebrew, samahonka. We went to one of your relatives who had a bee farm, and they had like a massive plate of honey. And so we would dip the bread in honey, which was like it's a key Ukrainian thing out here, but I never had that experience until I was there with Ian. But it's super like village Ukrainian, right? And I don't know, we don't have pictures here, it's a podcast, but you know, we went into one of the houses, and I remember it was a small town, and probably, I don't know, 450 people or something. I remember like within 5 or 10 seconds of walking, I told Ian, I was like, Ian, this is like, if I was to write a movie or to set a movie on Ukraine in a village, this is the perfect house. This is exactly what everybody thinks a village house in Ukraine looks like. It was like a movie set that we walked into.
It was surreal. Like, just small village, Eastern, like Ukraine, Eastern Europe,
Western Ukraine,
Eastern Europe, Western Ukraine, and like it's crazy, man. Because they're like, and all these relatives, so learning.
So you have the icons up on the wall. You have the Vyshyvanka over the Shevchenko painting, like everything that you could imagine would be in a small town village house was there, perfectly aligned, all cleaned and everything. And then, of course, they have this plate of like this massive bowl of honey. And they gave you like 4 jars to take with you too.
So just imagine eating 5 suppers in a row, because every house was like a massive spread. Like
supper at 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
So not only did you have to eat 5 suppers in a row, but you had to do a minimum of 15 shots of quality vodka throughout the day.
It was at least, right, Lee? Yeah,
it was at least 3, and there were some places that we had 5 or more. I think we didn't have more than 5 that day at any of the places until the last place.
So it was surreal. You're taking pictures, you're trying to explain who you are exactly, how you fit into the family. Lee's there with me taking the photos. So it was just
but Ian was quite impressive. I mean, you know, so he had spoken a few words to me in Ukrainian online before it came out, but we didn't really have full sentences. But one of the things that alcohol does is it gets rid of some of your inhibitions. And so by the third house, Ian's speaking, I wouldn't say fluently, but he's speaking full sentences back to back.
A2 coming on B1.
No, but like he would need one or two words translated from what his family would say, and then he would reply to them. Like I didn't even have to give the full translation. I would just translate a couple of words he didn't get, and Ian was having a proper conversation on his own with his family, which for me, as somebody who speaks Ukrainian here, and most expats out here choose to speak Russian, it was mind-blowing for somebody who has never been to this country to be able to speak full sentences and have, with a little bit of help, a pretty decent conversation with his family in their language.
Yeah, and we've talked about it on this show. It's like there's a lot that goes into like the language learning process before you're in the fun social stage. So I've talked about it on this show. Like I had tutors. Like I was going through all that painful process because when I showed up in Ukraine, I wanted to go to the max, like 0 to 60, right? So that's what it was like. Okay, I'm in the household. This is my chance here, right? It was a short trip actually, but
yes, but one thing actually, I think you guys want to ask a couple questions. I have a point to make about the trip, but I think you guys have
sure.
some
And then we got to talk
about
how it led to a wedding.
So one thing that I just wanted to say real quick was that I'm really happy that you're bringing up the alcohol. So I keep saying on this podcast, I've said it many times, that alcohol is the best tool for learning languages. Like
100% agree.
Social tool.
In high school or university, we shouldn't be in classrooms learning languages, lectures.
Okay.
We should be at bars.
Oh man, as a teacher, I can't exactly condone
that. Marcus, as not a teacher, I would say there's one other thing that's as good as alcohol for learning a language, and that's having a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
We talked about that too.
Yeah, our Mexican.
Those are the two key things. But it's not just that. If you can find a friend in that language that doesn't speak English, but like you have similar. So when I was in Ostrog and I was friends with these people, I met a guy at a club. So I knew the club because I had been to the town before my first exchange program. And so I went to the club and I was by myself, and this guy across the table started chatting with me. He didn't speak English. I spoke 20 words of Ukrainian at that point in time. And we were trying to have this conversation. We both drank. So going back to your point. And then his friend, this girl, she spoke some English. She ended up translating for us. And so he ended up calling me a couple of days later. The first time I took a phone call in a foreign language, which was a whole experience. I remember it clearly. This is like 20 years ago almost, and I remember this phone call clearly. And he invited me out to go and play football. And so I went out and played football, and we became best friends from that. And the translator, his friend, ended up being my translator / girlfriend for the first 3 or 4 months I was here. And she is the primary reason I speak Ukrainian right now. She knows this. We've had this conversation many times since. But I still chat with that whole group of friends there. Is like my family here. And so it's been 20 years, but we still contact each other regularly. We still see each other a couple times a year. It's but he didn't speak. He still doesn't speak English. 20 years. I think he's learned 2 words in those 20 years. And now I speak more or less fluent Ukrainian. But now I go and see him and I chat with his family in Ukrainian. And it's so different from when I first met him, when I spoke 25 words of Ukrainian, to now where I can tell them things about Ukraine that they agree with, but they never thought about it that way. You know what I mean? Like, it's a really cool experience.
Yeah, man. Those friendships, relationships, like huge motivation.
Yeah. So to get, are there other questions right now, or should we get back to the story?
For me.
Keep going. Let's talk about that wedding.
No. Before we get to the wedding, I got one other thing
okay.
before that. So I've told Ian this many times because I've done other diaspora trips post Ian. Last summer, actually, a city councillor from Saskatoon, my city in Canada, came out here with her husband, a former MLA in Saskatchewan, and we took them out to almost the same communities as Ian. For it was his ancestral family, and we went to one village which was, I don't know, 12 people, and we ended up finding somebody that knew his relatives. It wasn't his relatives, but knew them. I think she was 89 years old. But when Ian was there, and I told him this, Ian's diaspora trip was, I wish we had a documentary crew with us because it was perfect. It was the dream diaspora. Every diaspora person that comes out here and wants to do this trip the diaspora trip that I've been talking about, everybody wants exactly the experience that Ian had. So we went to something like 15 different homes. Every time we went through, Ian went through, how he's connected with elements of the family, and they would go through, okay, that person was here, when did they go to Canada? They had this whole, okay, where do you fall into the family tree? But at least at 2 or 3 of the homes, they actually had family trees. So these paper notebooks, they weren't notebooks, but they were like binded papers with actual photographs of many of these people, and then their name in like a bio, or like when they were born and died, what their jobs were. And we went, one of the probably the most, the thing I remember the most about Ian's trip out here is one of these places, they took us to a cemetery, which is a pretty standard thing to do on a diaspora trip. And so we went to the cemetery, and they're sitting there and they're pointing out where his dead relatives lied in the cemetery. But they weren't just pointing it out because they had the book open. So they point to the person in the book with the photo and the bio and be like, that person is lying there, that person is there. And at the same time, they're trying to figure out like where Ian's side of the family relates to this family tree in the book. And so you have like 6 family members hovering around this like family tree book in the middle of a cemetery. And it was just brilliant. It's what every diaspora person dreams of when they come out here. And Ian had, and I tell him how lucky he was, he had literally the greatest diaspora experience, diaspora trip you can have in Ukraine. And that was even before the wedding that we ended up at, which he's going to tell you about right now.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, Cody, you've talked about, you have some heritage languages that you'd like to learn perhaps in the future as well. Because if anyone's thinking about a heritage language, like whatever your background is, like I highly recommend doing it, because oh my God, like even maybe you can't get exactly in touch with your long lost relatives like I did, like it's quite the thing. Because Cody, aren't you like partly Finnish and
yeah, Swedish, Finnish, and Welsh, I believe it is.
Don't learn Swedish.
Yes.
Or a waste of time.
And actually, my sister did a Europe trip after she graduated high school. Yeah. And she was with her friend, and they both went up to Sweden and Finland as well. And they visited all the family that we have there. But unfortunately, she wasn't learning Swedish or Finnish, but she thought it was a really, really amazing experience. I could tell it had left an impression on her because in the past few years, like she's been like kind of like here and there trying to learn Swedish.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. So it had that influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
On her there.
Cody, have you ever been to Finland before?
No, I haven't.
So I need to tell you, because this is my part of the world and I hear stories, and Finland is like the #1 place to go to. I'm going there next year during the hockey championships. Canada plays in Latvia, so we can go up from Latvia to Finland. But if you're interested and you want to experience Latvia, Belarus next year, let's do Finland next May, June.
Suomi, Koskenkorva, sauna.
And then we have our actual Swedish guys.
Yeah, go to Finland, man. Finland's fun.
These trips, yeah, it's super cool. But then, okay, the cherry on top for me, just like cap off talking about.
No, so it was already the perfect diaspora trip, and then this happened.
Okay, so just this random weekend, Shabanka relative, that's my mom's maiden name, is getting married in Lviv, and like they knew we were like visiting Canadians in town, and his friend who's an expat out there, they're there. do you guys want to come?
Not just an expat, the editor of Lviv Today.
Sure. Okay, Lee.
No. But no, the wedding was in Lviv. It's my city, man.
Yeah, your city. Your city. And anyway, we got an invite to this Ukrainian wedding, and I don't know, man. If you want to talk about like,
wait. Tell them about the prep for the. Tell them about the prep for the wedding, because you had to go on a little fashion trip before.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, for those watching on YouTube right now. So this Vyshyvanka, this was bought by one of the relatives we had met the previous day for me, because he's like, you got to go to the wedding, a Ukrainian wedding, in style. So, yes, thank you. I forget the relative's name currently, but he supported me out with this. Lee, you were rocking one too?
No, I didn't. I don't think I had mine.
You didn't have one
with me at the time. No, I have 3. But Ian's, like, I know Vyshyvanka's out here. I write about him regularly. Ian's Vyshyvanka is beautiful. It is one of the nicest I've seen. It was not cheap. And
yeah,
I was like,
we got
look, like don't pay
awesome.
that much. You know, and he's like, no, we're doing this. And anyway,
he buys
Ian got
it.
spoiled.
Very spoiled, and then it was super cool because you show up to the wedding itself that we didn't even know was going to happen the day before. There's our name on the invitation in Cyrillic. I remember Lee written in Cyrillic, and like, holy crap, man, we're at an actual Ukrainian wedding. Sit down, the traditional music is playing. There's rules for shots at weddings.
Games.
The band is playing like Ukrainian music, and then I just remember eventually at one point, like, we're eating all the traditional food, the dishes. One point there's a dance circle that you're going around, and you have like a little towel. So say I don't know, say we all of us, 4 of us, and then like a bunch of girls, and you got to like put down the towel in front of the girl that you want to dance with. Get on your knee, ask her to dance. She'll come dance with you. You do like a round or 2, and then she grabs the towle and she goes.
No. You're missing a key point of this. So this is a key thing at weddings. There's somebody in the middle that dancing around, and then you go and choose the person. But before I get into this dance, normally at weddings they mark you when you walk in, so you have to buy a pin from the couple, and they mark you if you're married or if you're single. So they put the pin over your heart if you're married, and they put the pin over the other side of your chest if you're not married. So everybody, you're already marked when you walk in. And so the dance happens after the meal. So you've already had, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 shots of vodka at this point in time. Also, you've had a lot to eat. So you're not like hammered, but you're fun. You want to dance, you want to sing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's that time of
night. So they have this thing, and the whole idea of it is to pair off single people with other single people. And so when a girl's in the middle, she goes and chooses the guy, because you have to kiss at the end. This is the whole thing, right? And the kiss can be a peck on the cheek, or it can be a full-blown, French kiss, 25 seconds sort of thing, whatever you want. Well, whatever the 2 people want, right? And so when a girl is there, she goes and chooses the guy. When the guy is there, he goes and chooses the girl he wants, right? And so, like, if it's a married person, then they'll go and choose like a kid or whatever. But often it turns out that young people that are single, like Ian, it's their opportunity to dance with and kiss the girl that they're interested in, chatting with after the dance.
Yeah,
and this happens at all weddings. Well, not every wedding, but like I've seen it at several weddings in Ukraine. It's a pretty traditional experience at a wedding.
Yeah, no, it was the dancing, the singing, the eating. It was just.
Right. So I wanna know what happened.
Just it was like party, man, like absolute party.
Yeah, but with the matching.
Like. You just dance, right? Like you just dance. You go up. Yeah, I guess I was.
So you have to understand. Ian was he had to be a good behavior because it was his first time meeting his family, and he was like out of the blue invited to a wedding with his buddy from Canada that nobody knew, right? so he wasn't. It wasn't really. Like he didn't. How many people did we know there, Ian?
No, not many. Like a few relatives.
Like the guy that bought you your shirt and his wife, I think.
So no French kissing.
No, man, no, dude. no. Just participating. It was that we happened to be there that weekend.
The French kissing is usually for the guys that know what they're doing. It's usually for the locals.
Yeah.
So I've been at several weddings and I've done this a few times, and I've never done. I don't even choose the girl I'm like most interested in because I'm too. Yeah. You know, I would now because I'm more of a local now, but like at that period of time, you know, you're just like, what's going on, right?
Yeah. It was nuts. It was super fun. I recommend weddings abroad. Going if you can get.
Weddings and funerals also are fascinating.
Okay, funerals.
You know,
yeah,
no, like
were those 2 shots at funerals? How many shots at weddings?
Weddings go for 3 days. So you're, and I'll tell you why, because I've done this a few times. So, well, no, you wake up and you're kind of hungover and you're kind of drunk, right? But the thing is, there's so much food made for a wedding. And Ukrainians don't throw it out at the end. It's not like a restaurant. They take it home with them. They paid for it. So you eat it. So you have that for breakfast the next day. But when you have that much food, you can't have that much food without drinking. So you start drinking again whenever you eat, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. But by the time, because you had so much alcohol the day before, you have a few drinks with breakfast and you're pretty drunk by the time breakfast is done, and you still have a ton of food. And so this goes on for days until they finish the food. But I'm not kidding you. This is a regular thing, not just in Ukraine. This is a Slavic world sort of thing. So yeah, how many shots do you have? I mean, I went to a wedding once. The first wedding I went to in Ukraine, it was like 17 years ago or something like that, and there was 9 crates of vodka. I think there was 250 people at the wedding. It was a really big one. And there was 9 crates of vodka. I don't even know how many bottles that is. It's got to be like 900 bottles of vodka or something like that for one wedding.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty nuts.
But I'll give you another story. So my buddy, I was telling you, the guy that I met at the club, my friend who never spoke English, his name's Vasya. And so it was him and our other buddy's birthday. They had the birthday in the same week. And so I had met him 2 or 3 weeks before, and they asked me to borrow my backpack. And I have like a huge 45-liter backpack, like backpacking backpack. And I'm like, what do you need it for? He's like, oh, well, we needed to take the vodka home. I'm like, it's not too big. He said, no, we need your bag. So I was a little bit like, are they going to steal my backpack? And no, literally, they took my backpack. They filled it up with vodka for their birthday party. They were 17 years old. And they filled up a 45-liter backpack of vodka for their birthday. You know, but it was a dual birthday, and there was, 60 people there or something like that. So like that's how it works here. And remember, it's not just a vodka, because you're not supposed to get people drunk in Ukraine. The person that's pouring, their responsibility, and it's part of the rules, it's part of my article I wrote in the rules, you're supposed to pour with what's called a light hand. Meaning, if people have a hangover the next day, you did not do your job properly. So your goal is to have people drunk enough that they want to dance and sing, but not drunk enough that they are puking or want to fight.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah, reasonable aim, for sure.
But it's a responsibility of the person that has the hand.
Correct. And that's the person pouring too, right?
It's the person with the hand is the person pouring. And here's the thing. So for example, on our trip with Ian, we went to 5 places that first day. If I had poured the vodka in the first place that we went to, I would have to pour it at all 5 places we went to that day. So whoever has the hand at the first place, it doesn't matter what bar you go to, what house you go to, the whole night, the person that pours the first drink pours for the rest of the night.
Yeah. I don't know. It was pretty crazy. Super fun. Okay. So that was my trip, heritage trip. Anyone, their heritage language, highly recommended. All right. I just want to ask Lee here, the latter half of the show. So, Cody, you were speaking some Russian and you're asking why the start, and we kind of touched on it. So, Lee, if you could just kind of talk about one of the things I put down for our show notes to talk about today is bilingualism and how Canada is an officially bilingual country, but Ukraine's not, yet how people in Ukraine are actually like more bilingual than Canadians. And then
so
Marcus and Cody can ask about this too.
This is very interesting for me because I'm an English speaker in Canada and I'm a Ukrainian speaker in Ukraine, which means that I'm the majority language speaker in Canada, but I'm the minority language speaker in Ukraine. And now,
right. So just to make that clear, Ukrainian's the minority language in Ukraine.
I'll clear this up in a second. It's not the minority language.
Okay.
And the reason it's not the minority language is because this country is fluently bilingual, meaning every person in Ukraine can speak both languages fluently. Now, every person in Ukraine will not agree with what I just said because they might not be able to say like 70 words in a language and they'll be like, no, I'm not fluent in that language. But they can watch movies, listen to music, have conversations. And I know this for a fact because I don't speak Russian and I've traveled around this country, Eastern Ukraine. I've lived in Eastern Ukraine as an election observer several times for many months. And because I'm a foreigner, they will speak to me in Ukrainian. They would not speak to me in Ukrainian if I was a local because they knew that I could speak Russian. And so in this country, everybody speaks both languages. So what language you speak is a choice. It has nothing to do with ability. It's a choice. And when it's a choice, it becomes a political statement. Okay. And so language in this country is for the first quarter century of independence, it was the single defining political issue in Ukraine. And to this day, if you want somebody to talk in Ukraine, ask them about their thoughts about Russian or Ukrainian language, and they will talk to you for 20 or 30 minutes straight without interruption, telling you their ideas of Russian, Ukrainian. The key point I want to make is in Canada, we are an officially bilingual country where the vast majority, probably 80% or more, are not bilingual. This country is an officially unilingual country where the entire country is fluently bilingual with Russian. There's other languages as well, but I'm just talking about Ukrainian and Russian right now. And that is a fascinating, if you look at the laws that we put in Canada on bilingualism, and you look at the laws in Ukraine on unilingualism, they're for much the same reason. They're to protect languages. But we had to do bilingualism in Canada to protect French, and they had to do unilingualism in Ukraine to protect Ukrainian. So that's the basis. Now I'm going to let you guys ask questions from that.
Okay, so I have a question. How do people learn Russian in Ukraine?
I mean, it's spoken. So it would be.
But like, where would you speak? Where would you speak Russian?
So I'll answer this question from somebody from Western Ukraine, where they speak Ukrainian at home. Okay, because in Eastern Ukraine they speak Russian at home.
Okay, can I just a quick question? What is considered Eastern Ukraine? Like, is Dnipro and Donetsk? That's Eastern Ukraine, obviously, but not Kiev.
Yeah, Kiev would be considered Eastern Ukraine.
Really?
Central, East.
Well, we're gonna drop the central from it. If you go historically, the river, the Dnipro River through Kiev, split it. So left bank, Kiev would be Eastern Ukraine. Right bank, Kiev would be Western Ukraine.
Okay, got it.
So, and of course, there's central. That's a modern concept, but like traditionally speaking, Kiev was the border. The river was the border. The Dnipro River was the border. So, how do Western Ukrainians speak Russian? Well, there's several reasons. First of all, you have to remember that people my age, I'm 40 years old, people my age are born in the Soviet Union, right? So they had to speak Russian. In the Soviet Union, you had to speak Russian if you wanted to be a businessman, if you wanted to be a politician, if you wanted to be a diplomat, if you wanted to have any sort of significant job. So what the Soviets were very good at doing is marginalizing the indigenous languages of the different Soviet republics, so that they were like, farmers speak that. Well, you can do that if you want to be cultural, if you want to like dance or something, you know. But like if you want to be a professional, if you want to be an intellect, if you want to be an academic person, you have to speak Russian, right? And so, you know, I'm 40, and everybody 40 and above, just think of this, or less than that, 35 and above, or what is Ukraine, 30 and above. Anybody 30 and above obviously speaks Russian because that was the language that they were brought up in, right? So even if you spoke Ukrainian at home, you still had to know Russian. You had to know Russian just to get ahead in life. But more than that, all of the movies that you watched were in Russian. All of the best music, outside of a couple of groups,
like culturally.
Pop culture. It's like in Canada,
pop culture.
We know so much about American history just through pop culture, from watching Disney movies and Warner Brothers and things like that, right? So this country, it's a small country like Canada is to the United States, or like Ireland is to Great Britain. So it's dominated by Russian culture. And rightfully so. Russian culture, pop culture is spectacular. There's so much talent in that country when it comes to art, music, dance, you know, all that sort of stuff. And of course it comes in because they speak the language, right? So still today, and we're talking 27 years after independence, every person speaks Russian. And it's not like it used to be to get ahead in life. It's not because that's what will, certainly it helps. I mean, if you want to do business, you know, you have to learn Russian in Ukraine. But it comes down to, you know, that's what other people speak. That's what the movies are in. That's what the music is in. That's what the books are in too. The best books in Russian. The Russian book market is spectacular, and it's so superior to the Ukrainian market. It's similar to the Canadian book market versus the American book market. How many Canadian books do you buy? Probably not many. And that's the whole thing with Ukraine too. Now Ukraine's done very well, especially post Maidan. And
just for our listeners, Lee, what is Maidan?
So Maidan was the revolution, the third revolution, the second one known in the West. It happened in 2013-14, about 7 years ago now. And it essentially deposed the president, who ran off to Russia, where he continues to live right now as a fugitive. And sort of installed a super pro-European parliament and president.
So that's Timoshenko, right?
No, that's not Timoshenko.
Wait,
that's 2004.
Oh yeah, that's right.
No, and Timoshenko did not win the 2004 election. Okay. She lost the 2004 election. It was Yushchenko that won the 2004 election.
Yushchenko.
Yeah.
Yushchenko. So where is Timoshenko right now? Then
Timoshenko is still leader of a party. Timoshenko is one of the most famous people in the country. One of the 5 most famous people in the country. She is. She's been in politics her entire adult life, for virtually the entire post-independence Ukrainian history. Everybody has an opinion on Timoshenko.
Oh, you know what? I'm mixing. Sorry, Lee. I'm mixing up Timoshenko and Yushchenko. I'm really sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yushchenko.
Yushchenko has essentially retired to anonymity. That's pretty much what he's at.
Got it. Okay, now I'm on board.
Timoshenko is still leader of a rather important political party in the country.
Right. Yes. Now I'm on board.
All right. So what's happened after the Maidan, Lee, with these language laws in Ukraine?
So, well, I mean, I think I need to give a little bit more of a history before I get into the modern stuff, because you got to give a bit of a background of where things are at. And I'm good. I'm not going to do a whole huge thing, but there's a couple things you need to remember. One of them is that the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, has consistently tried to eliminate indigenous languages from other parts of this world. this Eastern European former Russian Empire world. So it's not just Ukraine, it's Belarus, which continues to happen. It's Latvia, it's Lithuania, it's Moldova. It's, I'm not even talking about Kazakhstan and those ones. So this is a policy that's been going on for a long time. But as far as like 1876 was the, you look at the EMS ukaz, which you should look it up.
Yeah, you sent that to me today.
Yeah, and ukaz is like a government edict. And essentially banned Ukrainian from, like, you couldn't teach it, you couldn't print papers in it, you couldn't have clubs in it. Essentially the only people that could speak Ukrainian are farmers. So this was 1876, right? So this is 50 years almost before the Soviet Union existed. And actually, when the Soviet Union first came about, they were very pro-Ukrainian language and pro-Latvian language, because they needed the support of the republics, or what would become the future republics of the Soviet Union, because they were more worried about czarists, or the empire coming back. So they actually promoted indigenous languages for a good 10, 15 years after the Soviet Union first came about, in order to build support to battle the czarist forces. But after they had sort of defeated those ones in the 30s, then they went after the languages, and the same sort of thing, same EMS ukaz again. They, essentially banned Ukrainian from everything. They killed, they purged a bunch of the key people that were advancing the language at the time. And then I mentioned it earlier, the Soviet Union essentially marginalized indigenous languages in the Soviet Union to being rural, cultural. It's cool if you want to dance that way, but if you want to be like a business person or a real man, you have to speak Russian, right? Or if you want to get ahead in life, you have to speak Russian. And so that's sort of the context of where Ukraine and other countries came into independence. So a couple of things that Ukraine did when they first came into independence, one of them was they banned dual citizenship, which is still in effect today, even though it is completely not enforced. But they did that because you didn't want, a third of the country getting Russian passports. Could you imagine if a third of Ukraine right now had Russian passports, were legitimate Russian citizens? What would the war in the East look like if they had Russian passports?
I don't know. You tell me.
What would it look like?
Well, it's the same cause that the Nazis used to move into the countries. We're there to protect our own citizens, right? Hungary does the same thing with giving passports to Hungarians that are outside of Hungary. They do it in Romania especially, but they do it in Ukraine, they do it in Slovakia and other countries. It's a way it's a foreign policy procedure, and it's a way to justify other means of going into a country. And so Ukrainian leaders at the beginning were well aware that this was something that has been used in this part of the world in the past, recent past, the past 50 years. And so they made this country unilingual, and they made they still banned dual citizenship. Now, I'll tell you, virtually every major politician and every oligarch in the country has more than one passport, including virtually every president that's been, so that they don't enforce it, but they still can't allow it, because they can't allow a third of the country, getting passports to Hungary and Russia and other countries, right? So, but another law that they did is they made Ukrainian the sole language of education. Now there are Russian schools.
Yeah, this I found fascinating. Yeah,
so they have Russian schools. Yeah, I can. First of all, I want to be clear that there are Russian schools for people that have ties to the Russian language, heritage ties, meaning if your grandparents were from Russia, you can go to a Russian language school. But all of the national institutions in Ukraine are Ukrainian only. I go to Shevchenko University. You are not allowed to speak Russian in class. And sometimes they do. In fact, sometimes the professor will ask the students do you mind if I speak Russian? And if all of the students agree, they can speak Russian. But if there's one student that says no, they can. Nobody cannot speak Russian. So just one dissenter in a class. And they're not even supposed to speak Russian, even if everybody agrees, just for the record. But the whole idea is that you need to foster a language that has been specifically targeted for 150 years to make sure that it doesn't go away like Belarus. You have to have these sorts of laws. Now, I'll give you an example of when I was in Belarus. I was in Belarus in 2014 for the World Hockey Championships. And I was there for a couple of weeks, and we were hanging around with a rather young crowd. So I would say around 19 to 26, somewhere in that area. So pretty young, mostly in university. And I didn't speak Russian, but I spoke Ukrainian. And about half of the people that we were hanging around with, let's say about 20, 25 people. So, it's not a huge demographic. This is anecdotal, not prescriptive by any stretch of the imagination. But of those 25 people, about half of them spoke Belarusian, and half of them only spoke Russian. Only Russian, no Belarusian. And so when I was chatting with them, when they didn't speak English, I would speak Ukrainian, and I would speak to the Belarusian speakers who would have to translate my Ukrainian, because they spoke Belarusian, to Russian. So I would say like roughly 80% of Ukrainian and Belarusian are similar. So they got most of what I was saying. I didn't have to really explain a lot. Most of the vocabulary is similar. When they spoke to me in Belarusian, I understood most of what they were saying as well. So, but I would have to find Belarusian speakers specifically to translate for me. Now in Ukraine, they didn't want that to happen. And so they've actively, another law that they have here is that you can, doesn't matter where the movie comes from, it has to be dubbed into Ukrainian, not Ukrainian subtitles. It has to be dubbed. So if a Russian movie is being shown here, it's dubbed in Ukrainian. If a Hollywood movie has been shown here, it has to be dubbed in Ukrainian. That's still the law today. It's really frustrating for English speakers because we can't, in virtually every other country outside of Ukraine, this part of the world, Hungary, for example, I can go and watch James Bond in English with the Hungarian subtitles. But in Ukraine, it's dubbed. And so it's really frustrating. Now they've got around that because they can have special showings in their original language. So it can't be a regular show, but you can have like one showing in Russian language or one showing in English language. So now some movies we're able to see in English, but nothing Disney or Pixar outside of Star Wars. Star Wars for some reason gets a pass, but nothing else from Disney
there you go.
you can watch in English. So there's a lot of these laws that they had in place to protect the language.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to pause here for questions, but then I'll get into how things changed after the revolution 2013-14.
I don't really have anything.
I have something interesting that I want to bring. It's like it's political in nature, but it's like a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it up.
It's well, since we're talking about like controversial stuff, I'll bring up something that's like been pretty hot in the news in Canada in the past, I think, week or so. But there was a statue in Ottawa that was. Did you guys hear about this? It was like defaced.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
And it was like the statue was to like essentially to like Nazi collaborators from Ukraine.
This is the Ukrainian one. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oakville, wasn't it?
Yeah, and in light of all the Black Lives Matter protests, like they went and defaced it, and now like there's this big controversy on like all that, and there's actually like if you look into it, like there's kind of a big like correlation between like Nazi collaborators and from Ukraine that came to Canada. Wait.
Okay, give you.
You're gonna have to be a little bit careful with this one because this is literally a Russian disinformation talking point that they've been very successful in pushing, and so I fundamentally disagree with the fact that you're talking about Nazi collaborators from Ukraine. There were people in this country that collaborated with the Nazis, not because they believed in what the Nazis were doing, but because they were nationalists and they wanted their own country and they didn't want to be under the Soviets. This is a super tricky thing for all countries in this region. And I mean, there's things that have happened, especially Croatia's really bad. Ukraine was next, really bad as well. Lots of bad things happened here. There's a lot of Jewish people, Westerners in this country, and we have these conversations regularly as expats. Because this is something that they believe in, that they've been taught, that they've researched, and this is what they've read. This is also something that Russia pushes as a reason for the West to dismiss Ukraine. The important thing to remember is that every country in this region has virtually the same anti-Semitic history as the other one. So, but for the little countries, so take out Russia, take out Germany, look at these little countries that have been, fighting for their independence. Essentially, everything that they did was to try to get, Poland is a great example for this as well, but they did some bad things to get their independence. And if you look at World War II, it didn't really matter. I mean, okay, so you support the Soviets. Is it any better? You're supporting Stalin? It doesn't matter what you do. It's easy to rail on somebody from any country in World War II because they were supporting the bad guy, because everybody was bad, right? So it's really hard to talk about Nazi collaborators. But the problem I have is that this is something that Russia uses right now to target. It's one of the primary, if not the number one, disinformation lines on Ukraine, is that this country is anti-Semitic. This country is full of far-right radicals. Russia has way more far-right radicals, is as or more anti-Semitic than any other Slavic country in this part of the world. But they've legitimately and honestly have the West believe in these arguments that for some reason Ukraine is more radical or more anti-Semitic than any other country in the region, which is absolutely false. It's just absolute false. So I hope that was clear. It's a super touchy subject, and I know that people will come at what I just said, but what I just said I can back up, and I'm okay with that. So
okay, yeah, well, I mean, the point isn't to get into a debate about this. I just thought it would be an interesting, even though it's super controversial, I just thought it would be interesting.
It is really recent, because that was in the news last week.
Well, Stepan Bandera is he's a figure that's very popular in Western Ukraine and super unpopular in Russia. I mean, like super unpopular. So Russians call pro-Ukrainians Banderisti, so Banderists, after this one guy, because and he was brutal, man. Him and his military leader Shuhevich, they would execute Polish professors before World War II happened, because they were super patriotic, which is why Western Ukraine loves them. My argument is generally, I don't believe that I don't believe that anti-Semitism was what was driving them. I believe that nationalism is what was driving them, but they did some brutal things. And I tell Ukrainians regularly that you can find better figures to put up for patriots, but they're also not what Russia makes them out to be. And I mean, Russia's right now rehabilitating Stalin, who is far worse than any of these people that they try to label on. It's not just Ukraine. This is a regular disinformation thing for lots of different countries. Soros, for example, right? So this is a regular line. But to get back to your statues thing in Ukraine, it's far more interesting what happened after the revolution in 2013-14, where they did, there was about 3 years of decommunization, where essentially they pulled down every Lenin statue in the country. So we had that, Black Lives Matter sort of thing right after the revolution here, where they called it, was it Lenin Padav? So Lenin's falling. And there was actually a map they had online of all of the Lenin statues that had come down. And I was actually in Kyiv when they pulled down the Lenin statue here. It was the second Sunday, if I'm not mistaken, of the protests. And it was a really interesting, I'll tell you this because it's a very good story. And I actually have videos I can send you afterwards if you're interested. But so Sundays were the major rally days during the revolution. And so people from outside of Kyiv, from across the country, would come to Kyiv for the major rally on Sunday. And so we came in for the major rally that weekend. It was the second weekend of it. So it was after the protesters had been beaten. It was it was a fully fledged mass protest movement at this point in time. And this was the 1,000,000-man march sort of moment. This was the Sunday where they had they speculated over 1 million people at the Maidan for the speeches that afternoon. And so by that point in time, the protesters had taken over City Hall, Kyiv City Hall, and that was their home base. And so because, it was a people's hall, you can see this in some of the American cities right now. I think Seattle had an area like this for a while. Well, this is what happened in Kyiv, and this was integral to the revolution. And so I had never been to Kyiv City Hall. And so after the speeches, we went to do a tour of City Hall. And so we were waiting in line. We were third from getting in, and they paused letting people in, and about 40 people poured out. And I was a journalist at the time, and I was thinking about following them, but it's super dangerous. It's not even the United States. It's far more dangerous because the government can literally turn on you at any point in time with guns or more, which happened about 3 months later. But so we went in, we did the whole tour, and City Hall, I mean, they had part of it was a hospital, part of it was a canteen, like a restaurant for volunteers, part of it was an organizational center, part of it was a hotel, so where protesters would sleep during the day because all the protesting happened at night, like the dangerous parts. Part of it was a training center, and the top floor was actually the media center. And so we ended up at the media center, and we had a live feed from Lenin, and we actually were about 2 blocks away from Lenin at the media center in Kyiv City Hall, the protesters' media center, and we saw the live feed of them pull it down, which was, you have to understand, this Lenin statue was, the only reason it hadn't been taken down before is because the socialists and the communists made up enough of parliament to block legislation to take down that statue. So it had been a flashpoint in this country for 25 years. And so when it actually came down, seeing the protester crying, hugging, high-fiving, it was really a surreal moment. And I turned to my photographer at the time, and it was like, look, they just we're two blocks away. We can go and check this out. We can get some photos. The police can't get there for half an hour. There's too many people. So we can go there, get some photos, and get out of there before the police show up and, stuff starts happening. So we left, and we went right over to the statue. Like I said, 2 blocks away. It took us about a 5-minute walk to get there. And you can see us. I have pictures of us. You can see I was wearing a green hoodie, so it's pretty easy for you to see me on TV because everybody wears black and brown out here, gray. So I have pictures of us on TV, and we literally got right up there. We got pieces of Lenin. I have videos of people taking a sledgehammer to him. It was like the Berlin Wall moment here. And so, you brought up statues in Canada and North America right now. The one thing I have to add before I let you guys get back into this is I came from Western Canada. I came from, a place where we sort of look down on protesters. Oh, you don't have a job. You got nothing better to do than go out and protest. You live through a revolution, and you see how important protests are to a democracy, to allowing the people to stand up to garbage politicians and politics. You see what's going on in the States, and you may not disagree with what some of the protesters are doing, and I get that, but you know what? You don't have a democracy unless people can protest. So you need to protect. I would honk for a protest I don't support just because I support them actually protesting. It's been a fundamental, 180-degree shift for me on protesting. I support protesters protesting things I fundamentally disagree with. But, in a democracy, you have to have protests, because if not, this country, Ukraine, would not be where it is right now if it wasn't for protests. So I've done my little spiel, and you guys can go from there. That's my statues bit. So
right on. What's our running time right now, Marcus?
We're at an hour and 36 a little bit. I was thinking about going like 10 minutes more, then I gotta go to the lab. But yeah, Lee, that was super interesting to hear your perspective on that. So there's no more Lenin statues in all of Ukraine, even in the east, or?
Yeah, pretty much. The one thing that doesn't apply to is military stuff. So if there's if Lenin's on I don't think Lenin's on anything, but sometimes you'll see the hammer and sickle on war memorials, and those are not being decommunized. They're war memorials, so those are allowed to stay. I can't think of any Lenin on any of them. So lots of streets were named Lenin, and the year after that, even in like Donetsk region, right, you would see Lenin streets change to Lenin streets, John Lennon from the Beatles. They would change Lenin to Lenin, and they put a little photo of it would be stenciled over, and they'd have a stencil photograph of John Lennon. So it'd still be Lenin Street, but it would be after John Lennon, not Vladimir. So
nice.
That's a fun
Lee,
way to correct that.
Okay, Lee. Can you just talk as we finish up here? You just wrote a really interesting series for en.hromadske.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right? That's a
en.hromadske.
en.hromadske, Jaku. Can you talk a little bit about because it was a 10-part article series about different eras in Ukrainian film history?
Yeah, it was discovering Ukraine through film.
People learning Ukrainian. This is something I want to go check out, the films you've talked about in these articles. But can you just give us some of the highlights from that series?
Yeah, so I pitched the series to en.hromadske during quarantine, because I knew that a lot of people would be at home and would have time to watch movies that they never had. So I put together a series of how to learn Ukrainian history through watching films. And so it's a 10-part series on essentially from like Kiev and Rus Ukraine, from the very beginnings, 1,200 years ago, to contemporary Ukraine, to right now. And there's literally go through. There's most of the movies, almost all of them, have at least English subtitles. There's a handful that don't, but that were included in the series because hopefully somebody will put English subtitles on them at one point in time, but they're worthwhile to watch. But even reading the series, if you're interested in Ukraine, you will learn the very basics of everything you need to know about Ukrainian history by reading the series. There's an entire series on Ukraine during war, so a bunch of films on the war. There's a learn more section after each of the films, so a place to visit in Ukraine, or for the contemporary ones, like where to find out more information. So you can find out about the MH17. You can find out about the key battles in the war in Eastern Ukraine. You can figure out what happened with the annexation of Crimea. There's a great film on Ukrainian language, actually, that they put together. It's called Solovey Spivaya, The Nightingale Sings. And it's a movie made by Ukraine, an academic look at the Ukrainian language. And it's sort of geared towards, specifically targeted towards Russian-speaking Ukrainians as to the reason why they speak Russian right now. And it goes through the history of, Russian attempts to minimize, to marginalize, or to eliminate the Ukrainian language. And it essentially shows Russian-speaking Ukrainians why they speak Russian. I want to just get back to the point from the last time. How have things changed in this country since the revolution? Before the revolution, generally, if you spoke Russian, you were pro-Eastern Ukrainian, which means pro-Russian. If you spoke Ukrainian, you were pro-Western Ukrainian or pro-European. It wasn't. I mean, these are very
arbitrary.
Yeah, I mean, they're relevant, but they're stereotypes, right? There's plenty of people in Eastern Ukraine that were pro-European, and there was plenty of people in Western Ukraine that were pro-Russian. So, but it's pretty generic. Following the revolution, the biggest change in Ukraine after the revolution, the single biggest change is that the language issue is not anymore the primary political issue. After that, so in Ukraine, I did a series for Lviv Today on this day in Ukrainian history. And I wrote one on, I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, but it was a guy who was killed because he told people at a bar to stop speaking Russian in Lviv. Like, this is how fundamentally language is to people out here. I'm Russian and that's the language I speak. You do not tell me what language to speak. I speak Ukrainian. You shouldn't speak Russian. This is, like, it is fundamentally the first part of culture. And after the revolution, you saw cities like Lviv that would actively support people speaking Russian, which never happened before. Or cities like Mykolaiv, which is generally a Russian-speaking city, who you would go to like downstairs at a rougher pub, and they would be singing Ukrainian folk songs, right? And the whole thing is, after the revolution, it changed that it doesn't matter what language you speak as long as you're a Ukrainian patriot. And so you can speak Russian, but you still have to be pro-Ukraine, right? And it's all changed now. And for me, as a Ukrainian speaker that doesn't speak Russian, it's provided me with so many more opportunities, because it's like wearing a badge. Because I speak Ukrainian and I don't speak Russian, Ukrainians view me as safe. He gets it. He understands Ukraine because he chose to speak this language first, right? And it's the biggest change in Ukraine. It's like a nuclear bomb went off in this country and fundamentally shifted the primary political issue that had been that way for 25 years. So I just wanted to bring that in. I think that's another point that you want to bring up. So
for sure. Yeah. Marcus, Cody, Russian sometime soon or what?
Я говорю по-русски, по-намайче.
Я разумею, я понимаю, я разумею. Yeah. So I want to give an example. So we're going to talk about Surjik in a second, which is a mix of Ukrainian and Russian.
We don't got much time. Can you just kind of sum up?
I'm trying to keep it short here. At the beginning of the thing, I said 100%, right? Which is Russian, but it was the way that I learned it from the beginning because it's easy. It's like 100 is 100 and procentiv sounds like percent, right? So 100%. It's very easy. I only learned this year it's actually 100% in Ukrainian, right? So I still have that habit of saying this one in Russian. But this is the thing. Even like super Ukrainian speakers will still speak some Russian, or super Russian speakers will still say some things in Ukrainian. And when you get to the villages, it can be a mix of who knows what, and that's called Surjik. And it's just a mix. And one of the things that you need to understand about how language works out here is you will regularly see, especially in Kyiv, somebody speaks to another person in Russian, and that person replies in Ukrainian, and then the person replies back in Russian, and they have a fluent conversation where neither of them changes the language.
Weird.
It's a really unique. I don't know if there's any country in the world that can say that has that type of experience.
Yeah, sounds strange.
Yeah, man.
Sounds
unique.
Strange. So
it's
Lee,
a
I
real
have
ability. It's a real ability, and once this country has a couple of generations that are raised with Ukrainian language in school, and that's their primary language, this country will become bilingual, or I would expect trilingual, because I would expect English to actually be there as well. And having a trilingual country, or certainly a bilingual country, where everybody has, like everybody, we're talking about people that drop out in grade 10 have the ability to speak both languages. It's a massive resource base, and that this country can tie into, but they have to protect the Ukrainian language, and they'll probably take another 2 generations, I would expect, so probably another 50 years at least. So,
Lee, I was going to ask you a couple final questions.
you bet.
So first of all, any plans on coming back to Canada, or you're staying there forever?
No, I come back.
He comes back
I
once
come
a
back
year.
to Canada. Yeah, I come back once a year. I work I work for a political party in Canada, and so I come back and work on elections every year.
Oh.
But I work as a foreign journalist out here, so I'm kind of back and forth between Canada and Ukraine. I probably spend a little bit more time in Ukraine than Canada, but no, I don't spend 12 months a year in Ukraine by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. Oh, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But no. And where do you go?
Yeah.
You go back to Saskatoon, or?
Usually, because that's home, and I like to visit friends. But when you work, you go where the jobs are, and so sometimes I work for campaigns that are not in Saskatchewan too. So,
All right, so all over the country then.
I try to stick to Western Canada. I'll be honest.
Western Canada. Okay.
I'm Western Canadian. I understand that region a little bit more. I've lived in Alberta a few times. I live in BC, so yeah.
Cool. And then my second question was, how are you guys doing with COVID in Ukraine right now?
Surprisingly good.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, the government hasn't done a whole bunch in the last year, but they really did clamp down on. They put us in quarantine earlier than most of the rest of Europe, most of the rest of the world. In fact, they tried keeping the metro open. That didn't work, so they closed the metro about 3 days after they started quarantine. This was in March, like it was pretty early. We went through we tended to get about 500 cases a day in Ukraine. It's not bad. It's a population close to 40 million people, so 500 cases a day is not terrible. The problem with COVID is Ukrainians don't have the money to not work, and the government doesn't have the money to pay them to stay home. And so the government was forced to open up because people just didn't have any more time to stay at home. It didn't have any, people would have had to start stealing things, I'm sure, because they were running out of their savings, right? And so we opened up about a month ago, and our COVID cases daily have jumped. They've about doubled. So we're about 1,000 cases, new cases a day in Ukraine, but it's been the same since we opened up. But surprisingly, Ukrainians, of course, there's people that don't listen to the rules in every country, but more than you would expect in Ukraine, people are adhering to the rules. You don't go into businesses without a mask. I have not seen problems with that. Nobody in the metro has a mask. In fact, I was in the metro for the first time last week, and only one person even had the mask below their mouth, meaning everybody else on the train had their mask over their mouth, and most of them over their nose as well. So they were wearing their mask properly. This is not a country that you would expect this to happen, right? So I've been really impressed with both the government and the citizens' response. So we're doing pretty well in Ukraine. Europe's not letting us in right now. I mean, I can as a Canadian, but Ukrainian citizens who have visa-free travel to Europe are still not able to go to Europe, which is a bit frustrating at this point in time because we don't have a high rate. So there's no real reason to disallow them. But I expect that to change in the next month or so.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. So
All right.
I got to get going.
Yeah, okay.
But
so
hey,
let's
we did
finish this
a
off.
solid hour and 45, maybe?
Okay, there's a way I have to end this pod, though, because
All right.
wearing this shirt and walking around Kyiv with Lee. So, Lee, I'll say it here, and then we'll tell it what it means in English. So, Slava Ukraini.
Herom Slava.
Which means?
Long live Ukraine, and then long live our heroes.
Yeah. Glory to the heroes. So it's something you hear all the time.
Heroes. Yeah.
Something you hear all the time.
Yeah. And I do have we talk about the alcohol. I have a little shot of Horilka here. It's a half shot, but there's a big phrase in Ukrainian. It's a super Ukrainian phrase. And so Ian, I'm gonna do it with you. So the Budmo.
Budmo.
Hey.
Budmo.
No. You have to say hey. So when I say
sorry,
Budmo, you
sorry.
say hey.
Gotcha.
Budmo.
Hey.
Budmo.
Hey.
Budmo.
Hey.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.
Budmo. Na zdrowie.
Я люблю Ukraina.
Molodets. Do you know that one?
Dobre, no.
Molodets is like, well done, young lad. You use it for like encore to play. You use it for like that was a great goal in a hockey game. You use it when your kid ties a shoe the first time. It's one of the best words to learn in Ukrainian. It's also Russian. Molodets. Yeah, and it's the same in Russian as well. So you can use it for both of them. And it's one of the best words you can learn in a language. Molodets.
Write it down.
Perfect.
Molodets.
All right.
Like moloko, which is milk, but molodets. So anyway, Budmo. Budmo is Ukrainian. Na zdrowie is Russian, Ukrainian, and Polish. But if you want to be really Ukrainian, you say Budmo. So Budmo. And thanks for having me.
Hey, it was a pleasure, man. Take care.
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks.
Talk to you.